Welcome to the HR Stories podcast, listener question edition, where there is a lesson in every story. Each week, the team at HR Stories podcast shares questions from our podcast audience and provides tangible, practical advice that everyone can use to get HR right. Our hosts today are management and HR consultants Chuck Simikian and John Thalheimer. What is on your mind today? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the HR Stories podcast, where there is a lesson in every story. It's the question and answer edition. This is our question and answer. So we get questions from our listeners. We have questions from our Facebook community page. Yeah, if you guys haven't joined us on our Facebook community page, make sure you do that. It's the Team of One, right? I always forget the name of it.
The HR Team of One community on Facebook. 3.6 thousand members, all kind of questions, all kind of comments. I mean, I just looking at one that came up today. They just posted a graphic that says, it's time to look for a new job when you're too embarrassed to recruit for the company. So someone just throws that out there, John, and they've gotten 5 comments on just people, chiming in saying, I hear ya. I hear ya. So it's a support group. It's a Q&A group. And a couple of our questions today are coming from this group today. And in fact, John, I know you answered a few of these online. And when we asked them, I actually want to read some of our participants, how they answered the question. So the first question is one you answered, and you certainly can dive into it too. But there were 10 comments, and this person simply said, the owner of our company is trying to rehire an employee that voluntarily left, but is awful for our culture and doesn't fit our core values. So I'm guessing this is the HR person saying this, right? I've made this point numerous times, but it seems to go in one ear and out the other. I have no idea what this person, I'd never heard of anything like this before happening. Yes, and it happens all the time. Okay. That's what I've experienced. One ear out the other. They're not great for the culture. They don't fit the core values. Anyways, this person says, I would love advice on how to really get this to sink in.
Yeah. Again, I don't remember exactly what I said, but when you read it to me this time, I was flipping it in my head, right? I was thinking about the time that I was a supervisor and the HR person was like, I don't know, John, I don't know if they're a right fit. And I'm like, no, they're going to be great. I think they're going to be great. And they're like, no, I don't really know. And in that moment, what could have been said to get me to change my mind probably would have been different. And I'm always thinking about, let's just kind of pull back, right? Let's pull this back a little bit, Chuck, and think about how do we set this up in the beginning, right? How do we do this so that person, in this case, the owner, but in most cases, it's probably a hiring manager, that they understand how important the culture is to the organization or the culture is to the team, right? How the team works together and how important it is there, right? Because sometimes we see this expert as a manager or supervisor, we'll see this expert like, oh my God, that's exactly what we need. We can bring them in, blah, blah, blah. I'm not worried about that, right? And so having that conversation early on about before we're interviewing anybody, talking about the importance of culture, talking about the importance of teamwork. When we're hiring somebody, we have to keep in mind, will they work well with the rest of the team, right? And so balancing that. Yeah. So again, that's kind of my first kind of throw out there. I know it's a little different than my answer, but I think that was what popped in my head when you kind of
I'll tell you what you said. I'll tell you what you said. It's actually and that was a good answer. And your answer was right spot on. It says, look, at times there's nothing you can do. Try one last time to get your point across. Provide examples. Like you said, show those examples of how this could impact the team. And if they don't listen, document it. Document the conversation and maybe hope they will learn. That's pretty much what everyone. Elizabeth, who is like super user. Elizabeth, shout out to you, Elizabeth H. She says, since he's the owners, Elizabeth answers all these questions. She's fantastic, right? She says, since he's the owner, others also disagree with the decision to bring the person back, but there's not much you can do if he's already aware. So he's already aware how everyone feels. If you continue to push, then they may very well label you as the problem.
Yeah, good point.
So I'm like, Elizabeth, you rock. You are absolutely right. So, yep, folks, that's about it. There's not much you can do, but some great answers there. Thank you, John.
And again, I think your job now, right? If the hiring decision has been made, let's go a little further. It's been made. You're going to hire that person. Your job in the orientation and the onboarding, with the help of the manager that person's reporting to, is to make sure that they understand the expectation of the organization and how you're not going to allow them, like they did last time, to have that bad attitude, right? And I'm not saying tell them last time you had a bad attitude and we don't think you should be hired, but just let them know this is our behavior norms and hold them accountable for that.
Yeah. So this next one is not one that I had a lot of experience in. So I was really fascinated to read a lot of the comments. Okay. And you, I think, jumped in here too. I can read you what you said. It was, insightful as always, but this is, from anonymous. So this person posted anonymous, just because we allow people to do that. They don't want to be seen, but it was a she. So I'm just going to anonymous. She says, I am an HR of one. Today I interviewed a woman who is transgender, and I intend on offering that person a position. I have two questions. Number one, how do I fill out her I-9? I think simply her legal name and gender, ? So that was the first question. And I think a lot of people said, well, I-9 doesn't ask for gender, but as you said, you got to use the legal
I-9
document.
doesn't ask for gender. There's no gender on there. And it's a legal document. So you have to put the legal name, right? And I think that's one thing that in this world, people have to understand, that we're required to put down that name. Right. And so it will matter where this individual is in their transition, and have they changed their legal documentation to their new gender, to their new name. And so where are they? So that's what you're going to put down, is the legal name of that person.
Yeah. It's funny.
And then I think the other thing that we would call out here is that's the legal document. You could have in most HRIS systems, there's a nickname, there's a place for pronouns.
Yep.
And then you would ask, okay, so what do you want to be called? Right? What's your name? How do you want to be called? Same with almost any employee.
Yep.
Like, is that what you want to be called? Okay. Oh, John. Okay. You want to be called John? Okay. Because I may want to be called JT. I'm still trying to get people to call me that for 30 years, and no one has called me that.
JT. I'll remember that during our next intro. Okay.
So,
that's so. Yeah, and I will tell you, I dealt with a group that it was an alternative counseling group, and they had a lot of folks that they called them their names, and then their dead names. But you might have Diamond Rio, whose real name was like Bill Smith. But and I said, look, Diamond, I know you're not going to like this, and a lot of it, but I need your ID, and okay, I'm Bill Smith. Okay, great. But the next part, John, this is where it gets interesting, and this is where there's a little more finesse needed. So she goes on to say, the question goes on to say, we work with people who have intellectual disabilities. They may call her out. We can educate them, but they honestly may not understand. Should I have a conversation with her, the new hire, about that, or just let it roll? So what do you think?
I think that what she said there, the next sentence that she said in that was, when I'm dealing with new staff members that have face rings, I will let them know that those face rings may be pulled out by the individuals that they're working with, their clients that they're serving. And so I mean, again, my question, and this is a question that's not answered here, so we don't know for sure, is this person new to this field completely, or do they have experience? Because if they're have experience, I am assuming that they know that these individuals are going to blurt things out that may be inappropriate. And that is just part of their disability, and that you just go with the flow, right? That's just normal. You go with the flow. Whereas if they're new, I think during that person's orientation and onboarding, I would bring it up and just let them know, like, they're going to blurt things out that may feel inappropriate to you. This is how we deal with that. And give an example from your life, like, oh, I was blah, blah. I was dealing with this client and they said this about me. And at first I was really sensitive, but I understood that they didn't mean it in that manner. And so I let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. And we had some great answers also along those, this one Karen jumps in and Karen says, hey, if they would not be coworkers and they have profound disabilities and many will not understand or retain if you try and explain it to them. So, and also someone said, if this person's used to working with people with these types of disabilities, they may already be prepared to handle these situations. But I think you said, ask the person, how would you like to handle this? This may happen. So, all right. Yeah, that's it. It is one it's not a cut and dry. It's a little more finesse with it, but that's what we do. That's what we do.
Yeah, and it's so funny you say that, because I was talking to this workshop today and I said, look, one of the things that a lot of us want to come in and want HR to be black and white, but where we thrive is in that gray area. That's what makes us a great HR, is how do we deal with that gray area? How do we finesse it? How do we break the nuance out? So we are supporting both the employee and the employer and reaching those great win-win scenarios. I think that's what makes HR great.
I'm struck by that. People always want black and white from HR. And yeah, a lot of managers, they can do that, but they need us for the gray. And I love that. Wow. Blown away. Drop the mic, folks. You heard it here on the HR Stories podcast. Thank you, John. See you next week. So, all right. Final question.
That's it. I don't have any more left in me. No, I'm just kidding. All right, bring it on.
I have an employee injured at work. The employee has restrictions, and I think I can work with them even though they are somewhat extreme. Any advice on how to move forward? I'm already getting some pushback from the employee when I talk to them about coming back to work and getting the doctor's note and working with the restrictions. It seems like they kind of don't want to come back. They'd rather stay home and I think collect on workers' compensation benefits. Any advice? And I guess that's for me to answer since I deal with that all the time.
I would ask you that question, Chuck. Like if this came up, I would be like, I got to call Chuck. How do you deal with this? Here's my just two takes on that is one, you want to make sure that what you perceive that they don't want to come in because they just want to sit at home, right? That's what I'm perceiving from that question.
You're right.
You want to make sure that's true, right? You want to make sure that your perception is not wrong, because they may have a fear because of the accident, or they may be worried about driving or whatever. There may be something there. And so being aware, right, that is condition of their pain, their physicality, their mental anguish. And so being aware of that. But I also think it's an opportunity to talk to them about why don't they want to come into work? We want them to be here. so people know who they are, so they can continue to work, so they can continue to get full pay, so they can get what they need. And at the same time, give them the benefit of, we know you're going to need time off to do this. It's going to take longer. We know, right? And making sure that it's a feeling a good environment for them.
Yeah. So, yeah, I've had this happen before. And basically, the employee is out. They might be at home for a couple of days. The doctor's note comes back and it says, look, they have these restrictions. I will always, go back to the employee and say, I have good news. We can work with these restrictions. I'm not going to say anything like, I know you don't want to come back to work. I know you want to sit at home, that sort of thing. It's always good news. We can work with these restrictions. We can get you back to work. We can get you earning, your income again. And so it's then up to them. I say, what's your availability? When can we get you to start? And if they don't come in or don't want to come in, then that is up to them. And unfortunately, John, here's the deal. If I have work available and they don't come in, they won't get free money. They will not get workers' compensation insurance benefits.
Right.
So sometimes employees don't like that I'm able to work them. But it is you stay on message. And yes, I have had people say, you'd say, okay, we're going to have you drive around on the golf cart and patrol. And they're like freaked out because they're like, look, I had knee injury. I had this hip injury, whatever. I know I can drive on the golf cart, but I'm worried that if someone jumps out in front of me in their bike or a kid, I'd slam on the brakes. I'm going to get further injured. Oh yeah, you know what? I didn't think about that. Those are the things that we bring up and you just brought up. But the most important thing here is stay on message and just say work is available. Okay. If they come in, great. If they don't come in, if they call off, you want to say, hey, and you follow your standard, your standard, attendance policy and everything like that. But that's the best thing you could do is get the restrictions, work within the restrictions, and it's a mutual thing. Okay. And like I said, I did have this where we're going to put him on a golf cart and he said, look, I could get hurt even worse. Or like, you know what? You're right. You're just going to sit and I got something for you there. And go from there, but stay on message. Work is available within your restrictions. Keep pushing that message. And then if they decide they want to come in, great. If they don't come in, your insurance costs will not go up. So
that's great. Yeah.
That's bottom line. But here's the other thing, John, I just want to tell you is a lot of times it's so litigious that folks will automatically get an attorney. They'll want to get some sort of payout. They think they're going to be millionaires. They never are millionaires. But you need to remember anything and everything you put down in the email to the employee is discoverable. And like I recently found out in a situation is that they may copy their attorney and you may not realize it. And so you have to keep on message, keep professional. And if you need advice, talk to your workers' comp adjuster. Boom.
Yeah. And the thing that I would add to that, right, because I think that's a great point, is this is where HR needs to take the lead and get the manager out of it. Because managers have a tendency to be a little more emotional because they're closer to the situation. And I'm not saying that's always bad, but yeah, I definitely think I can think back onto situations where managers, maybe myself, said things to the employee when they shouldn't have, and then that's in there, and now it's discoverable, and blah blah blah, and then get kind of doing that. So I'll make one define like, okay, who's going to contact the employee? It should be HR. The manager should just be pulled out of it. If the employee reaches out to the manager, they should say, you know what, you need to talk to HR. They're the ones handling this. I'd be more than happy to be in a meeting with you, with HR, but HR needs to be there.
Yeah. No, that's great. I literally have gone to the point that I will tell sometimes an employee, you do not do anything but this. And if you are asked to do something else and it's outside of your restrictions, you say, no, please call Chuck. Okay.
Right.
Because of that. So, John, you got anything else for us today?
I got one quick question, and this came up today in my class. It's workman's comp, and so I just wanted to see how you would answer it. When it relates to out-of-state remote workers, are they coded for workman's comp for the corporate office, state, or their home state?
Boy.
So where is their workman's comp coming from, right?
It's probably going to be in the state that they're working, unless I have a listener that wants to give us some, and which, by the way, is why I have worked for companies and I have had clients that will say, we will hire remote workers anywhere in the country except,
right.
And they'll give me 5 or 6 states. Do not hire anyone that works in California, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, New York.
New York.
Yeah, right. I'm sorry, folks, but that's the reality.
Yeah. And so I think that's similar to answer me. I said, check with your workman's comp, right? And say, hey, we have remote employees. How do you want to deal with them? Most likely, right? And I don't think this has happened. I don't think a lot of companies are doing that, but technically you should register in that state with the state Department of Labor, Industrial Relations, whatever they're calling it, to say, hey, we have employees in your state. And then therefore, then the workman's comp needs to be done and all that kind of stuff. And so just be aware of that. My first thing would be to reach out to my workman's comp and say, look, we got employees in these various states. We want to make sure they're covered by workman's comp. What do we need to do?
Yeah. It's funny. I'll just tell you, I worked for, I had a client that they ran call centers, and they said, where are you living? What states? Okay, these are the only states. And then they found out through, I don't know, pinging and traffic routers that they had one of the employees was living in California.
Oops.
And they fired her. Nope, sorry, you cannot live in California and work for this company.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything illegal about that. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, we talk about that, right? And so.
Yeah. Well, what they got away with was, if you're going to move, there's a policy. If you're going to move, you need to notify us first.
Right.
They did not.
Let us know. Yeah.
So, all right, John, this has been great. Do you want to wrap it up?
Let's wrap it up. Thank you all for listening to the HR Stories podcast, question and answer edition, when there is a lesson in every story. We will see you next week when the story comes to us. Thank you for listening to the HR Stories podcast. The material presented in this podcast is for informational purposes only. Chuck and John always recommend using an employment lawyer or HR consultant to handle any legal concerns or HR issues. We do our best to double check sources and make sure the information we are providing is accurate. We may eliminate or embellish without changing the basic narrative to make the story easier to understand. In certain circumstances, we may change identifying information to protect the innocent. The HR Stories broadcast is brought to you by the team at HR Stories. The team at HR Stories is designed to help anyone with HR responsibilities be better at managing the employee experience. To engage with us, go to the hrstoriesteam.com and learn more about how the team at HR Stories can support your business or nonprofit. Thank you for listening to the HR Stories podcast, where there is a lesson in every story.